Now, just as with ChatGPT, you can also upload files to Microsoft Copilot. Though at least at the point of time where I'm recording this, you can only upload images. Still, here I did now upload an image and ask it to describe the image. And as you can tell, it indeed accurately describes the image, and it even picked up small details, like the fact that there is a glass barrier in front of that scene, which indeed is there, but which could be hard to see. So that's working pretty well, and that is therefore something Copilot can do for you as well. You can give it images, for example, also scans of receipts or invoices, and let Copilot analyze and describe those images. As you see, it also gives you some follow-up questions which you might want to ask, and you can simply click on those suggestions to ask those questions, though of course you can also ask your own follow-up question. You're not limited to these suggestions. Instead, you can keep the conversation going and ask for more details with your own questions. For example, I could ask where this image could be, so where this image was taken, which of course is a bit hard to answer because there's not much information on the image, but nonetheless, Copilot does its best to help me here. Now, Microsoft Copilot can not just analyze and describe images or extract data from images. Instead, you can also ask it to generate new images. For example, here I'm telling Copilot that I want to generate a similar image, but it should now depict a lake instead of the sea. And indeed, Copilot will now try to do that, and it does have those image generation capabilities. As you can tell, at least at the point of time where I'm recording this, it's using DALL-E 3 for that, just as ChatGPT does. And that's of course also worth noting. You can also analyze images with ChatGPT, and you can also create images with ChatGPT. Now here you see the results, and I'd say they're not too bad. Though, of course, they're also not perfect either, because the original image clearly was taken from some terrace with that glass barrier, as it correctly described here, and that aspect is totally missing in those images. Nonetheless, it might be a helpful feature for generating some images. Now, I mentioned earlier that Microsoft Copilot also has these conversation styles. And these styles, for example, influence the tone and conciseness of the response generated by Copilot. And to show you how these styles differ, I'll ask Copilot to write me a blog post about traveling to foreign countries. And I'm doing this in that default, more balanced style to begin with. Now, as you see, it then goes ahead and generates me some text here. So now it's done, and yeah, I think it's a nice text, but it's not necessarily a good blog post. It's pretty short, pretty concise, more like a description I could use for myself, which kind of makes sense because, of course, we were in that more balanced mode. So let me now try that same prompt in the more creative mode. Because as the name suggests, that's the mode you want to try using if you're looking for creative work, like the generation of a blog post. If I use that mode, you'll see that I get a more detailed blog post, and most importantly, I get a text that would qualify as a blog post that I might want to share on my blog, and that's not just a description for myself. Here, at least in my example here, it actually didn't include any search results, but really focused on generating that creative text instead. And of course, we could now go back and forth and ask more questions and refine it and perform some prompt engineering, and you'll learn about all these things throughout the course, but this shows you how this creative mode here works. Now, last but not least, we can also try the more precise mode, and it hopefully won't be too surprising that here it won't be that great of a blog post. Instead, it will really focus on giving us some core information without too much fluff, which also actually could be a nice blog post, but I guess you get my point. It'll really focus on the facts here in this mode. So that's the result I got here. And therefore, these different modes might be worth playing around with, so that you get the best result for the task you're trying to accomplish, it's also worth noting that the more precise and more balanced mode also are a bit more secure when it comes to the problem of dealing with hallucinations. They can still occur in those modes, but they're a bit less likely because Copilot tries to focus on giving you just the facts and on not generating too much text. So that's also something to keep in mind here. Now that's in the end Microsoft Copilot, and of course the best way to learn more about it is simply to play around with it. As with all these different models and chatbots, new features are also added all the time, and the underlying models might also change. So it can also be a good idea to sometimes revisit certain chatbots or models you didn't like in the past because they might have improved over time. Now, Microsoft Copilot has one other interesting feature. If you're using the Microsoft Edge browser, you might notice this strange icon in the top right corner. That's the Microsoft Copilot icon, and it allows you to access Copilot from any website you might currently be visiting. And then here you can indeed use it like that chat you already know. So you can also switch between those different modes and so on. But you can actually also now use it to ask questions about the site you're currently on. And you can even switch whether it should auto-detect relevant sources, which also might include search results Microsoft has stored in its internal database, or if you want to focus on this specific page. And then, for example, I could ask it to summarize this article. And it would do just that. And that, of course, can be another really useful feature when browsing the web, because it means you don't have to copy and paste the content of a site or copy and paste a link to a site into some chatbot to have it summarize the page, but instead you can use Microsoft Copilot right from inside the Edge browser. Though at least here for me, it actually didn't pick up the actual content of this page, but gave me some general information about Academind in general, so about my company. Nonetheless, it is a feature you at least might want to try on certain pages, because chances are that it does work at least on some pages. You also got multiple tabs here in that integrated Copilot area, and you can, for example, switch to the Compose page to let Copilot help you compose certain pieces of text. For example, if you were to write an email because you're logged into Google Mail here. Or if you're working on a blog post and you're logged into your content management system, you could use this Compose tab to quickly generate some text, which you could then copy and paste into the email draft or blog post draft you might be working on. You see, you actually even got different templates here to choose from, and therefore this is an extension built into that Edge browser you at least should be aware of. So now that we had a detailed look at Microsoft Copilot, I want to move on to Google Gemini, which previously was called Google Bard, and which is simply Google's Copilot and ChatGPT competitor. Under the hood, it uses Google's models and does not use any models from OpenAI. Now, I will say right away that at the point where I'm recording this video, Google Gemini has some problems. It has been shown, and it has been relatively easy to verify, that Google Gemini tended to generate pretty one-sided, skewed answers, and especially images, to a point where it did actually not generate diverse images or content, which would be a good thing, but where it would generate historically incorrect, pretty skewed content, which is not helpful to anyone. Nonetheless, Google is working on these problems and is working on improving this model, and therefore you still might want to give it a try. Now, in order to use Google Gemini, you actually do need to sign into your Google account. And once you did sign in, you can get started with Google Gemini. Now, they do offer different models, And at least for their more powerful models, you do have to sign up for a paid subscription, but you can get started with the less capable models for free. Basically, as it also works for ChatGPT and to some extent Microsoft Copilot. Now, Google Gemini then also allows you to upload images, for example, to analyze those images and extract data. It theoretically is also capable of generating images, though at the point of time where I'm recording this functionality is disabled due to all those problems Google Gemini had with generating accurate images. So I can, for example, ask Google Gemini what the performance of the Nvidia stock has been over the last 3 years, and it then goes ahead and gives me those details. Though, as you can tell, at least here for me, it didn't give me the actual details, but instead some general notes and then some links where I can learn more about the performance, which essentially I would say is a missed chance by Google because, well, they would have all the data, they could have kept me on their site. But you also might be getting different results. What's worth noting about the results you're getting is that you can click on this Show Drafts button here, though, to see alternative responses that could have been generated instead. Now, it can take some time until these responses are calculated, but then you can switch between these different drafts to see which alternative replies Google considered giving to you. And that, of course, can also sometimes be helpful if you didn't get the perfect reply right away. Of course, since it's a chat, you can also ask follow-up questions. Though here Google then tells me that it can't provide the exact performance data, which might also just be a temporary problem right now, though, because that model is having those problems I described earlier. So, at least right now, this chat model actually isn't too helpful, and I personally don't use Gemini too much at this point of time. Nonetheless, of course, with all the data Google has, Google Gemini might become a really powerful chatbot in the future.